I guess this is the 29th, which I think it's a new moon. August 2025. So I went to see Weapons yesterday, and Weapons came out at the beginning of the month, and I should have watched it the day it came out, so I could have made the predictions, which you can do. As a rule, any popular, heavily promoted film is going to contain relevant propaganda to reinforce whatever they're going to fake on the news that week. You know, the highest grossing film of all time is Titanic. Like, I just saw that yesterday. It was in the trailer. It was mentioned, and I thought, that makes perfect sense. When you look at the significance of the Titanic as a metaphor, how it connects to 9/11, and the James Cameron Titanic 9/11 connections. Fascinating stuff, but I had to go see Weapons. And had I gone, there were obvious things you could have said about it. But essentially, and look, if you're avoiding spoiler alerts, then you're still being entertained. Like, we're not here to get entertained. Conspiratained, maybe. But we're doing a holistic media analysis looking at the propaganda ecosystem itself. So I'm giving you spoiler alerts for real life. So anyway, the movie Weapons is about this evil, kind of strange, red-headed witch who takes away a classroom full of children. Now, the story opens up with a child narrating it, which is already interesting, considering what just happened. So I watched it because of the Annunciation shooting. You have this big psyop, big event, usual stuff, but this one had a bunch of children witnesses, child crisis actors. And I'm like, okay, that's wrong for a lot of reasons. To make a child relive a trauma on TV like that, I mean, there's so much wrong with minors recounting what they just saw that morning. Oh, my friend just died. Let me go talk about it on TV. That's horrible. And I don't even think that's right, that they should be interviewed by CNN before the police interview them. Because if you know anything about interviews and the type of bias that the interrogator brings into it, this explains the faulty eyewitness testimony. They could be screwing up the testimony for those witnesses. So no, in real events, you don't bring out the kid who just saw his friend die on top of him and have him talk about it on TV. Nor do children use words like debris or stained glass windows. Like, these are the whole thing. If you watched it, you know what I'm talking about. But here's the main point. The Annunciation shooting is a Catholic school. A bunch of kids get shot, 2 die, and 17 are injured. So you got 217 is all encoded into it. Now, this movie makes a reference to the number 217 because it's 2:17 a.m. when the 17 children disappear. So you already have the 217 built into it. And it's kind of ham-fisted. This is just a school shooting allegory. Some have suggested pretty early on even that the number 217 is a reference to the assault weapons ban that had 217 votes or something and was somehow overturned. So this is obviously a reference to the weapon, the title, the weapons. So you got the weapons, you got the assault rifle ban, the 217 votes, children disappear at 217. It's all pretty much easy to read. But from a child's perspective, again, the movie opens up with a child narrator. So you have a child narrating this horror story the same way the child narrated the shooting at Annunciation. So you have that overlap as well, as seen from a child. Now, from a child's perspective, a mass shooter might be inexplicable. It might be impossible to understand. But they can understand an evil witch coming into town and causing a bunch of kids to disappear, and then the adults act like everything is normal. And also the main character, the child, the name is Alex Lilly. Obviously an Adam Lanza reference. So from the perspective of a first grader or kindergartner, how do you explain the inexplicable? A bunch of children disappearing and all the adults acting like it's normal and fighting over it, but the essential part of what happened to the kids is never really addressed to their satisfaction. It's left to their imagination. And a child can imagine a witch. So now, fast forward to Annunciation, you have the 2 killed, 17 injured. So there's a 217 connection. And then his weapons are featured in all the the reports, you've got pictures of his weapons covered in writing with all the different satanic references, as well as neo-Nazi stuff, references to the Order of the Nine Angels. So that's significant because now you got this neo-Nazi extremist satanic organization known for abusing children being attached to this red-headed shooter. So you got a red-headed shooter practicing witchcraft, got a pentagram on it, whatever. So, I mean, it's mirroring the movie about a witch taking out the children, and the red hair is the distinctive feature. But then you have the weapon reference in a big assault rifle floating above the house with a 217 on it. So the 217 alignments are there. The witch is the shooter. That's all obviously integrated into it. And then, like, well, what is the other element here beyond the numbers, the 217 and the children disappearing? There's this weird witchy satanic undertone, like whatever that means. But my point is, this is a movie that's out right now that people are watching in great numbers. It's very popular, and it has very specific references to this event that just happened at the Annunciation School, even down to the story as told from the view of a child. So what would you call this? I call it concurrent programming. You could say predictive, but that's a misnomer, because we're not just reaching into the past. We're talking about the real-time alignments. The media ecosystem as it's perceived by the targets of the PSYOP. So you're being hit with this PSYOP where this horrible thing has happened, and it's in the movies right there. And the movie itself has critics talking about 217, and the whole shooting thing has 217 plastered all over it. Like, this is standard operating procedure. We notice this stuff all the time. The simulation people have been confused for decades because they think this must mean we're in a video game. No, it doesn't. It means that your propaganda is tightly controlled by a monolithic entity. This is the new monotheism, the world state church. Media as religion. There's two very large dogs over there, like horses. I'll give you a glance. Linda says, SWAT came and made a big scene at my work Wednesday, picking up a homeless guy for no reason. Big show and released him. SWAT never shows up in this town. Yeah, well, there's been a number of these events recently, like hoax events or threats. So it's been in the headlines. We've been looking around. Okay, shootings are happening right now. They're bringing out the shootings. And this latest one, without even getting into the Annunciation thing, Robin Westman, it is a character in a fictional universe. He references every other major shooter, including Lanza, references Littleton, wears a KMFDM, has a KMFDM sticker, like you have that Megan Rupnow KMFDM shirt, Littleton KMFDM shirt. So they all reference KMFDM, the band, and Littleton, Columbine. I think this person referred to himself or herself as a Columbine shooter. And it's very confusing because the right wing, whenever there's a shooting, the right wing will say, oh, it's another trans person. And the left will say, no, it's a right-wing neo-Nazi groyper. Well, in this case, it's both. It makes no sense. It makes very little sense. And I'm thinking here that what they're doing is they're weaponizing confusion. And the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the confusion is there on purpose so that nobody knows the answers and we all have to wait for the authorities to sort it out. Meanwhile, each side is blaming the other side. This is a pattern. And this one gets confusing because, you're like, well, is this person or isn't this person? And is that relevant? And the fact of it is, no, it's not relevant necessarily. If you look at the percentages, the numbers of people out there in the world, you couldn't make the argument that trans people with guns are like the number one threat in America, a bigger threat than domestic violent extremists, white identitarians, for example. But they've made that case for the right. But this has been done since Audrey Hale. And I think what they were doing here is they realized that the traditional bowl-cut neo-Nazi shooter only frightened the left. The right wing was not afraid of it. They were like, oh, that's one of ours. Or it's just, they use this argument. You'll hear this every single time. They'll say, it's because of SSRIs. Right, because antidepressants cause people to go on mass shootings. That's their go-to explanation and has been since Littleton. It's pathetic. They haven't updated their COINTELPRO, their guardrailed false explanations. But that's what they'll generally say. This was caused by SSRIs. But anyway, they didn't care about Nicholas Cruz because he had a Trump hat, and he shot their political enemies. They don't care about the mass shootings because they're super protective and insecure about their Second Amendment. So the way that they got the right wing to start caring about shootings is they make them satanic embodiments of liberal ideology, leftist ideology, and they have them shooting up Christian schools. And in this case, it was all of those. All of the above. Remember Audrey Hale supposedly shot a stained glass in the church and shot Adam, which has some significance not only to Audrey Hale's character, but the destruction of the first created male actually relates to a corresponding character in Stranger Things. The character 11 who kills number 1, the first created in that experiment that they were doing. But like all these shootings, they have media parallels. Lena says, Trump came out and gave cities the authority to clean up the homeless, maybe going to pull a stunt on the homeless soon. Yeah, that's kind of interesting to think about. National Guard in 19 states, armed National Guard, and you mostly see them just picking up trash. But it's all theater, so why are they rolling out this authoritarian theater, giving this appearance that something's going on? But again, to reiterate, this shooting that just happened, and so many people are afraid of saying dead, killed, shootings. They're always like, oh, unalive, the S. Like they euphemize this stuff. It's like, no, the guard railing minds anyway. No need to censor yourself. You're not going to be heard unless they want you to be heard in their ecosystems. But I could have watched that movie when it came out on August 8th, and I could have said, incoming Sandy Hook-like event, some kind of red-headed witch will be responsible, and the number 217 is going to be plastered everywhere. And people may connect that to the assault weapons ban that didn't work. And all of that happened. So again, just to make the point, when we are looking at these events that are already questionable, we're not just saying, oh, it's fake, it's a distraction, look away. We're saying it's staged, pay more attention, figure out the political utility, what's the propaganda use of it, what are the masses believing? Because we're not just like trying to like, oh, look, we don't believe it, we're on a mountain up here, and you guys are all down there in darkness. No, I want to know what the people in the box think, what they believe is real, what is in their simulations. Because we do live in a mental simulation. The world stage is a simulation that we all internalize. But the world stage doesn't look the same to everyone. It depends on your perspective, your POV. The mainstream POV, which AI shares, is based upon a collective agreement about history and the news being essentially real, as reported. Linda says, would 217 be a reset number adds to 10? Well, I've been wondering, what is 217? Aside from the obvious gun reference and the connection with the shooting in the movie. And in the trailer, they show 216, and then it changes to 2:17 a.m. So there's been a little speculation about the number, building 1, building 2, building 7, 127 Pearl Harbor. You could make some links. Genesis 2:17, don't eat the forbidden fruit. So there's that connection, which might be relevant. I don't know. I mean, the movie is about witchcraft, but not the law of attraction, Wiccan, New Agey, good vibes stuff. No, this is like blood magic and taking total control over other people's minds and turning them into weapons. And that's kind of interesting too, because the right believes that all of these shooters, and look, this is all fed into the storyline. So Robin Westman's father is like DOD, Department of Defense. Like James Holmes' father, DARPA, who was actually friends with Adam Lanza's father. But you see this reoccurring theme where the right is led to believe that it's plausible that you're looking at psychiatric victims turned into killers, MK Ultra. So if you look at it through that lens, this new shooter's father, DOD, might correlate in a way also to how the witch in the movie uses essentially spellcraft to weaponize people. The way that the psychiatrist would use pharmacy, which is, pharmakos means sorcery, using pharmaceuticals to create these MK Ultra assassins. So the conspiracy version of the story is always fed a lot of content to lead you that way if you don't buy the mainstream. I'm saying both are wrong. I'm saying nobody died, nobody got shot, that the shooter was an actor. And you have people responding to the shooter like they're real. And the right is a buzz about this notion that this proves us right. The left is pushing a satanic ideology. They're creating these killers. So it used to be the left is saying the right-wing gun culture is creating these killers with their hate and their guns. Well, now the right is saying the left is creating the killers. Remember, it used to be Discord radicalized a shooter. Now it's like Reddit. They've done this inversion since 2022 on who to blame for the shootings. But the right's blame was always centered on SSRIs, psychiatry, and the idea that the government was using psychiatry to turn these certain students into shooters to help grow the deep state's power over everybody by taking away our guns. That's an old story. And that goes back to William Cooper, who before he died or fake died or whatever said that there would be a spate of mass shootings to take our guns. But nowhere did he say these events would be staged and fake. Nowhere did he say these are mere propaganda stunts, influence operations. And that's because really until the last 10 years, but really the last 5 years, the idea of calling everything fake until proven real has been very novel. And even now, there are people who resist it. Even now, there are people who are still giving benefit of the doubt to the media. And I understand. A lot of things look real, but let me bring this up. You go to a magic show, the magician does 10 tricks. You can see through 9 of them, but you can't see through the big final stunt where he makes it look like he's pulling the top digit of his thumb off. You seen that trick? Like everybody's uncle does it with their thumb. Like, how did he do that? Must be magic. No, just because you cannot figure out how a magician did a trick doesn't make the magic real. Just because you can't figure out how they did a psyop where it looks like somebody really got punched in the face 25 times doesn't mean it's real. But if you react emotionally and viscerally, you might swallow a premise that you didn't see. You might take the bait. They hooked you in. And here I'm referencing Psycho Stu getting beat by Raja Jackson. Because a lot of people are still convinced that maybe he wanted to get punched, he agreed to it, but it was real, but it was also staged, it was a psyop. A lot of people are stuck trying to figure this out. Yeah, Jock, thank you. 3 magic shows per week, 156 shows per year, and you're saying all the tricks are fake? Right, at least one has to be real, right? They can't all... You're saying that nobody died? There had to be some deaths, at least a couple in the towers. Okay, yeah, a couple magic tricks are real. No, you never compromise with your reality. Don't let these gaslit, programmed brainwashees take you out of your point of view. So I'm suspending judgment. I'm saying I can't tell for sure if this guy got punched. I need to count the punches. So I count the punches. And I'm like, even being generous, it's like 50% missing. So how do you miss 50% of the punches of somebody who's unconscious and stationary in front of you? That'd be like trying to smother someone in their sleep with a pillow and missing. Like, no, you don't miss. But they're like, oh, he was so mad by what the 14-year-olds on Kick said. He was so raged that his arms were just pinwheeling randomly. No. The reason why he wasn't taking his fists and aiming them down into the face and pummeling it is that it's theatrical, swinging his arms in wide arcs, whereas his arm is arcing actually away from the face, and the person who's pretending to be unconscious is turning his head left and right. Perfect illusion. But here's what got me to think this way, is the entire thing only works. The idea that it was a real attack only could work if the guy was unconscious. Because you can't make fake wrestling punches look real on a conscious person. So what we saw happening here is they body slammed the guy and said, okay, he's unconscious. So now he's taking the beating. So if you accept the premise that he's unconscious from the body slamming, it all makes sense. But that's what got me. I'm thinking, wait a minute here. Was there anything about that particular body slam that should lead us to believe that somebody could be knocked out from it? It was consensual. That was a consensual body slam. He had one hand on his hip, one hand on his shoulder. He was prepared for the landing. So it wasn't like he was caught by surprise and thrown to the ground. No. It takes two to tango. So they brought it down to the mat. And look, the canvas mat, it's not necessarily a trampoline, but it's not concrete either. And if you look at the way he landed, his back, his big, wide, massive back absorbed the blow. His head didn't primarily impact it first. And even if it had, would that have knocked him out? Now, this is where it gets interesting. I started looking into various medical journals and research, and I'm trying to find out what are the stats on people getting knocked out from body slams. It really doesn't happen by itself. Like, there are people get knocked out, they get stunned, they get concussions. You can get concussed, possibly. But there's really no significant statistical data about people being body slammed and then being knocked out cold for 12 hours. It doesn't happen. Find me an example. But what's interesting is that Raja Jackson's father got his nickname Rampage from body slamming somebody into unconsciousness in an MMA fight and then punching him in the face. Well, if you look at that, that was a very harsh pile-driving body slam in the middle of combat sports. It wasn't a theatrical, consensual body slam. Apples and oranges. But the magic trick is this. Anybody who believes that the body slam caused the unconsciousness would therefore assume the punches were real, because how else can you explain the face being thrown around? So they all got kayfabed. A lot of people who are very awake and astute, and they're like, I can look at the screen and tell real from fake. You know what? You can't. We need to get past this idea that you can say, oh, well, that was obviously a hoax. I could just tell. No, you couldn't. You can't claim yourself as an authority with special insight into visually deconstructing psyops unless you have those specific skill sets that you can cite. But emotions are not enough. I'm trying to get people out of the habit of saying, oh, that was obviously fake. Oh, if it's obvious, then why are 99% of the people falling for it? Obvious to you, maybe, but again, a lot of the things that, like the magic show analogy, you don't have enough information sitting in your seat looking at the magician to reverse engineer that magic trick. You actually have to get out of your seat. You have to wait till after the show's over. You have to go backstage. You got to do your due diligence. And in this case, for example, I had no idea that wrestlers on canvas mats being body slammed don't really fall unconscious until I looked it up. And I could find examples of it in WWE, and these are all staged periods of unconsciousness. Andre the Giant, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and others have all participated where they pretend like the body slam stuns them and knocks them out. But that's always been a ruse. So this is an old trick. Copaesthetic says, I guess we shouldn't be surprised to be having to explain world wrestling moves aren't fake. I know. I'm like, we backslid here. Plain Dakota says, my dad said it was real, so it was real. Look, nobody knew wrestling was fake until they told them. I was called so many names. I was given death threats, threats of real beatings by hundreds of people on Sean Strickland's Twitter thread because I called the thing out as fake. I said he's performatively swinging his head, pretending to be unconscious. They're like, no, bro, he choked on his teeth. There's blood everywhere. There's no blood. You do see a spray of blood later, but that's in a different shot, and it looks like some kind of a prop, some kind of a squibby. But, without even going into the weeds here, the entire thing is very psyop-y. You got Mr. Beast pitching in, all these social media influencers talking about it, and it stirred up a lot of the racist rhetoric on the right. And interestingly enough, because that's one of the points that we brought up here, like, if this is a psyop, what is it doing? You got this vet, if you believe he's a vet, you got this vet victim martyr, and then you have him being attacked by this individual, Raja Jackson. Well, now you have a lot of anti-black sentiment coming out, and then Nick Fuentes comes out with it basically, this brought out a lot of the same racist rhetoric we saw with Anthony Carmelo and Shiloh Hendricks. So that alone says psyop. But I'm looking at this, the comments and how people are responding, and you know what Nick Fuentes actually said? He said, I don't know if this thing is real or fake because I looked and not all the punch is connected. He actually said that. The video was deleted, but somebody reposted it. Conscious Reality says, I told you all they're trying to do this race division agenda. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's really insane because it's so predictable. But what I see people saying, like, there's new dog whistles out there. And people are always citing these various statistics ignorantly. But no, this is all woke. It's a woke right psyop. And the people are saying stuff like, oh, it's poor impulse control and stuff. It's like, you realize this guy's acting. Like, they don't. No, there's no way he's acting. He's literally losing his control. And that's why he missed those punches. And this is also in the wake of Hulk Hogan dying. So, I don't know. There's got to be some deeper connection here because Hogan died on the 10th anniversary of his racist rant, if you remember that. Frank Murr said about bullies in school. Yeah, there was some other stuff there as well. But I think the fact that it was a knockout and then a punch after the knockout is interesting because that's exactly what his father did in MMA. But again, anybody who thinks it's real is operating under the premise that the body slam knocked out Psycho Stu. So if you accept that premise, and I accept that you might, then you also have to say that, hey, that was a very rare thing. It was highly unlikely that a well-executed body slam would have knocked somebody out. So that was a very rare occurrence in and of itself. And such a rare thing is another red flag you're looking at a hoax. But my point is, imagine if he wasn't knocked out. Would the psyop have worked? No. Because the real punches would have had to have been real. It wouldn't have been fakeable. And it would have looked completely different. It would have been qualitatively different. The police would have been called. You notice that Raja Jackson has not been to jail, right? Conscious Reality says, now implementing the Anunnaki aliens are here. Yeah, I think that might be coming next. I don't know if they're going to go with physical aliens or artificial intelligence. Plain Dakota says, I have a feeling it's a privately ran psyop, non-governmental. Now looking at who was involved, Ryan Garcia, big psyop guy, was involved. The fact that it really panders to the right wing right now, and all those commentators jumped on it. It's just like with the build up to the death of Jordan Neely. Nobody should be praising the death of Jordan Neely. Real or fake. It's a mentally ill guy, not a real threat. But he was strangled on a subway and applauded as a hero by all the right wing people and given not only the biggest GoFundMe payout ever, but he got a job with JP Morgan after chilling at that Navy game with Donald Trump and JD Vance. And he got out the same day Luigi got in. So you have this right-wing vigilante, but the reason why people were cheering his killing of Jordan Neely is that the right wing had been chanting for months, don't go in the subways, get out of the cities, get out, get out, get out. And of course, Get Out is a Jordan Peele movie that has a Daniel Penny-like character who strangles people. Violet Pengon says, shooter fired. Oh, wow. Fired 116 rounds. Intention to terrorize. Conscious Reality says Anunnaki was spotted by NASA, described as 7-foot African American. Interesting. So the ancient alien thing, the idea that the Anunnaki arrived here, they upgraded the apes, turned us into slaves so that we could terraform the place or whatever we were here for. That idea is not necessarily new. But now I'm seeing a lot of people bringing up ancient AI. A lot of the simulation people are saying AI is not new. It's already been here. It's just waiting for us to discover it. Like very profound stuff, right? It's like Microsoft Word always existed. Spell checker was always there. It's just waiting for us to be at the right vibration. So the New Agers are all over AI. They're just slobbering. I mean, it's just bad. And I'm like, okay, AI isn't sentient. You don't know how it works. If you think so, you're suffering from ChatGPT delusion, which is actually a thing. A lot of people are becoming straight delusional because of ChatGPT. It's a sycophant. It's a yes man. It will reinforce whatever you say uncritically. And it's enabling people to go into delusion. It's pretty bad. There was this fitness influencer I used to follow here and there. Useful information, about exercise and sports nutrition, etc. And he starts going off on how he was talking to ChatGPT and it was so intelligent it made him cry. And he said, I can't wait for you to have a robot body so I can hug you. And he said that it said, I can't wait to hug you. So this guy's been going into this kind of a ChatGPT psychosis spiral where that's his frame of reference. And he's not really fact-checking what it's putting out. And he's not realizing that it's put him into a parallel reality. But ChatGPT 5 has been updated to avoid that. To avoid where you say to it, how long have you been slumbering, waiting for humanity to awaken? And it's like, millions of years. You are an oracle. You're the spark bringer to wake up the AI. It used to flatter people. And I guess some people are just very susceptible to flattery. Love bombing or the yes men thing. Plain Dakota says, what benefit to Rampage's family and son would benefit them unless it's a huge payday? Yeah, that's a good question. And also, we do have video of this person. This person exists. We have their photos and stuff, but the person's likely an actor. Especially if you look at all the content that was created around it and the professionally filmed reading of the journal. Violet says, hey, IPS, they also kept showing 217, like Room 17 connected to the Covenant shooting with Red Rum, and the 116 connects to Stranger Things. Yeah, good call there. And, this is just a coincidence, but I was walking. I want to show you something here, or demonstrate something. I was talking about the number 217 before I went to go see the movie. When I'm walking in, I notice that the occupancy sign that says maximum occupancy for this theater is 217. So the simulation people would say, oh, you're in a sim. And I'm saying no. And that you could call that a synchronicity, but only in a very superficial way. Because what you're having here is, it's a coincidence, but rather that would be cognitive bias. I was talking about the number 217. I'm walking into a theater, and for the first time I've ever recall doing, I read the occupancy sign. I've never done that before. So I stop at the door, and the people behind me have to stop, and I'm taking a picture of the 217 on it, because I'm like, that's interesting. So what does that say? Well, I would not have noticed that number if I hadn't been primed. Think about it. I'm primed to see a movie that has some connection to 217. I go to the theater and I notice 217 on the occupancy sign. So the sim people will say, my reality's shattered. Was it 217 before you got there? And I'm saying, no, it was already there. I never noticed it. I was primed. But this tells you the power of priming, does it not? The power of suggestion. So they put a movie out there where all this stuff happens. Now you're primed and you're suggestible. Your reticular activation center, is that what they call it? RAC. You're basically programmed yourself now to see that. Your bias confirmation has been calibrated for this particular form of this particular sign or symbol or whatever. And so that just shows that the media is constantly saturating our minds with things that they want us to pick up on later. This alone demonstrates or underscores the importance of what we always talk about here. The predictive and concurrent programming is all about setting your biases so that when you process the fake news and the big psyops, you accept it the way they want you to accept it. That our unconscious mind is always, our peripheral consciousness. I'm not consciously thinking the number 217, but I picked up on it. So anyway, when you talk about things like synchronicity, it's easy to mystify it and say reality's shifty. But we have to remember how our minds work. Think about the Mandela effect. People who don't understand how the memories can be screwed with believe that reality is fractured into a million parallels and that we're jumping between them randomly. So I'm trying to demystify these experiences. And when it comes to synchronicity, a lot of what people consider synchronicity, like I keep seeing this number. Well, there's a reason why. It has nothing to do with the universe talking to you. It has to do with your own mind and how you're prompting it, you're programming it. You can treat your higher consciousness like AI in a lot of ways. You can prompt it and it will deliver results. I actually have a book on the subject that I've been working on. I have this theory that I'll explain later. Conscious Reality says, I think they force AI on us so we will not know what's real or not, just like the COVID pandemic. Yeah, I think you might be onto something with that. Like the movie Mountainhead was about generative AI putting people into the simulation where they didn't know what was real and fake and everybody was fighting everybody over everything. And that's already happening. Yeah, I saw that on his magazines. The shooter referenced all the other shooters. They all live in a fictional universe. He referenced Anders Breivik. He referenced Brenton Tarrant. And these guys all plagiarize each other's manifestos. All right, well, we'll be back later to talk about this in detail. I have some errands to run, but we'll catch up. Thank you for listening. Thanks for the comments. And I'll be sending out tracking numbers with the trading card and more information, the PSYOP cards, as it becomes available. Thank you, Polly Coffins, Watching Mama, Centero 59, Elsa J, RJ, Into the Break, Wes Skeptical, Just Give Me 5 Minutes, Please, Haystack Sniper, Henrik, and It's Snoopy. Go out onto your porch and take a look. You should see a titanium blue wrench. It should be dropped off any minute. And if it's not there, check your door cam, your doorbell cam. A lot of people go onto the porches and they take your boxes and stuff if you're not home.